Good evening and welcome to today's program of the Commonwealth Club of California, the place where you're in the know. I'm Dr. Mayer-Schonberger, host of Tech Nation, which airs on NPR.org and its 24-hour program stream, and also on the NPR channels on XM Sirius Radio. I'm your moderator for the program this evening. Tonight's program is being held in association with the Commonwealth Club's Science Technology Forum, exploring visions of the future through science and technology. Find us on the internet at commonwealthclub.org or download our iPhone and Android app for program and schedule information and podcasts of past programs. And now it is my pleasure to introduce today's distinguished guests. Viktor Mayer-Schonberger, Professor of Internet Governance and Regulation at Oxford University, and Kenneth Cukier, Data Editor for The Economist. Together they've written the new book, Big Data, a revolution that will transform how we live, work, and think. I had the distinct pleasure of interviewing Professor Mayer-Schonberger and Mr. Cukier earlier today at KQED for a Tech Nation broadcast to be aired in the coming weeks. And I thought you should know a few other things about these fellows. Professor Mayer-Schonberger has more than one law degree, only one of which is from Harvard. He's just not a lawyer, he's also a lawyer, and he's earned a master's in economics from the London School of Economics. With over 100 academic papers and 7 books to his credit, I think my favorite title is Delete, the Value of Forgetting in the Digital Age. His co-author, Kenneth Cukier, you best know with his long career at The Economist. Prior to being the data editor, he's held such positions as Japan Business and Finance Editor and Global Technology Correspondent. You might also know him as the Technology Editor for the Asian Wall Street Journal in Hong Kong. All very important because big data isn't just here in the United States, big data is global. So please welcome Viktor Mayer-Schonberger and Kenneth Cukier.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Welcome. Big data is going to change how we live, work, and think. And our journey begins with a story. And the story begins with the flu. Every year, the winter flu kills tens of thousands of people around the world. But in 2009, a new virus was discovered, and experts feared it might kill tens of millions. There was no vaccine available. The best health authorities could do was to slow its spread, but to do that, they needed to know where it was. In the US, the Centers for Disease Control have doctors report new flu cases, but collecting the data and analyzing it takes time. So the CDC's picture of the crisis was always a week or two behind, which is an eternity when a pandemic is underway. Around the same time, engineers at Google developed an alternative way to predict the spread of the flu, not just nationally, but down to regions in the United States. They use Google searches. Now, Google handles more than 3 billion searches a day and saves them all. Google took 50 million of the most common search terms that Americans use and compared when and where these terms were searched for with flu data going back 5 years. The idea was to predict the spread of the flu through web searches alone. They struck gold. What you're looking at right now is a graph, and the graph is showing that after crunching through almost 500 million mathematical models, Google identified 45 search terms that predicted the spread of the flu with a high degree of accuracy. Here you can see the official data of the CDC, and alongside it are Google's predicted data from its search queries. But where the CDC has a 2-week reporting lag, Google could spot the spread of the flu almost in real time. Strikingly, Google's method does not involve distributing mouth swabs or contacting physicians' offices. Instead, it's built on big data, the ability to harness data to produce novel insights and valuable goods and services. Let's look at another example, a company called Faircast. In 2003, a computer science professor named Ora Nezioni was taking an airplane, and he knew to do what we all think we know to do, which is he bought his ticket well in advance of the day of departure. That made sense, but at 30,000 feet, the devil got the better of him, and he couldn't help but ask a passenger next to him how much he paid. And sure enough, the person paid considerably less. He asked another passenger how much the person paid. He also paid less, even though they had both bought the ticket much later than he had. He was upset. Who wouldn't be? But he's a computer science professor, so not only does he get upset, he thinks about his research. And so what he realized is he didn't actually need to know what are the reasons on how to save money on an airfare, whether you should buy it in advance, whether there's something called a Saturday night stay that might affect the price. Instead, he realized that the answer was kind of hidden in plain sight. It was open for the taking, which is to say, all you needed to know was the price that every other passenger paid on every single other airline for every single seat, for every single route, for all of American civil aviation for an entire year or longer. This is a big data problem, but it's possible. He scraped a little bit of data, and he found out that he could predict with a high degree of accuracy whether a price that you're presented online at a travel site is a good price and you should buy the ticket right away, or whether you should wait and buy it later, because the price is likely to go down. He called his research project Hamlet. To buy or not to buy? That is the question. But a little data got him a good prediction. A few years later, he was crunching 75 billion flight price records with which to make his prediction. Almost every single flight in American civil aviation for an entire year. And now his predictions were very good indeed. Microsoft knocked on his door, and he sold his company for $100 million. The point here is the data was generated for one purpose, reused for another. Information had become a raw material of business. It had become a new economic input.
So it's tempting to think of big data in terms of size. And it's true. Our world is awash with data. And the amount of the digital data that is being collected is growing fast, doubling almost every 3 years. The trend is obvious when we look at the sciences. When the Sloan Digital Sky Survey telescope began in 2000, it gathered more data in its first few weeks than had been amassed in the entire history of astronomy. Over 10 years, the telescope collected astronomy data exceeding 140 terabytes of information. But the successor telescope, due to come online in 2016, will acquire that amount of data every 5 days. Internet companies in particular are drowning in data. Twitter messages exceed 400 million a day. YouTube has more than 800 million monthly users who upload an hour of video every single second. On Facebook, over 10 million photos are uploaded every hour. Google processes a petabyte of data a day, around 100 times the quantity of all printed material in the US Library of Congress. The quantity of data in the world is estimated in 2013 to reach around 1.2 zettabytes, of which only a small percentage is non-digital. So it's tempting to follow the hype cycle of Silicon Valley and to see big data as one characterized by the sheer size of digital information collected and used worldwide. But that would be like describing an elephant by the size of its footprints. In contrast, we suggest big data is more than just about the volume. We suggest that there are 3 defining and reinforcing qualities that characterize big data: more, messy, and correlations. First, more. Today we can collect and analyze far more data about a particular problem or phenomenon than ever before.